My name is Jane Rogers. I'm from the Cambridge Parent Coach, and today I'm going to talk you through the ideas in my workshop supporting your child with anxiety. So you might want to grab a pen and paper because I'm going to be suggesting that you jot things down, and also there'll be some follow-up activities that you can do at the end of the workshop. So I have tried to make this, it's quite a short workshop, but I've tried to make it relevant for parents who have children that are generally anxious, you know, the little worriers, and also for parents who have children who get worried about maybe just one or two specific things. So the way it's going to work is me talking to you like this, and I'm going to be sharing my screen with you. I've got a PowerPoint and I've got a video clip as well. And I'm also going to be referring to quite a few books, and at the end there is a list of books and resources which I will send over to Pinpoint. So if you would like those, then do get in touch with Pinpoint. Okay, so let's dive in. I'm just going to share my screen. Bear with me while I work the technology. Whoops, that's the wrong. Right, so supporting your child with anxiety. I'm just going to put that on slideshow. So this is the content of the workshop. As you can see, it's in two parts. So in part one, what does anxiety look and feel like? Explaining anxiety to your child. Some common strategies used by parents and carers. And in part two, we're going to be talking about some very specific ideas to help. So self-care and relaxation, training your brain, so teaching your child to control their thoughts, the stepladder approach, problem solving, and lastly, using books to encourage feelings talk. Right, I'm just going to stop share again. So some common anxieties in children. I've got a list here. I've got a list of common anxieties in children and in adults, and obviously there's some crossover. So children, the dark, that's really common. Being alone, going to parties, schoolwork, speaking in front of people, strangers, getting lost, public toilets, being upstairs alone, dogs. Obviously there are a lot of other things as well that children get anxious about. Being upstairs alone is something that I come across quite a lot, which can be a problem at bedtime. So adults, snakes, spiders, flying, needles, dentist, public speaking, job interviews, exams, driving on a motorway. So jot down, now just quickly, jot down an anxiety of yours, either something that you feel anxious about or something that you felt anxious about as a child, or something that your child now gets anxious about. So just jot down that quickly, and we'll be referring to that later on in the workshop. So what does anxiety look and feel like? So if someone is extremely nervous, so we have all felt this, haven't we, before we're going to do something that makes us nervous, or, you know, when something's happened, we might feel faint, we might feel sick, we might feel dizzy, we'll definitely get sweaty and have a rapid heartbeat, and our legs will probably feel like jelly. So as adults, we recognise that as someone who is extremely anxious. But I'm going to share my screen again with you, because those are not the only symptoms of anxiety. Bear with me again. Right. Anxiety can also look like this. So anger and aggression, opting out, withdrawing, denial, taking control, tummy ache, trouble sleeping, being unable to cope with everyday challenges. So the top one, anger and aggression. I often get parents come to me because their child has a lot of angry outbursts. And I will always, look, with any of these things, there'll be a question in the back of my mind, could this be an anxious child? So if your child has any of these things, that doesn't mean they're suffering from anxiety, but it's for you to find out. So underneath, there's some different types of anxiety, which I'm sure you'll be familiar with. So we've got social anxiety, separation anxiety, generalized anxiety, and specific phobias. So one of the first things that you need to do before you start looking at strategies to help your child with anxiety is to explain to them what anxiety is. So I just talked about that person that feels sweaty, their legs are gone to jelly, their heart is pounding, they're basically having a bit of an anxiety attack. So when children feel that, they don't necessarily know what is happening to them. It can obviously be very scary, and even like lesser feelings of anxiety, just that nervous, fearful feeling. Again, children don't necessarily understand that is anxiety. So anxiety and worry are completely normal, and I think it's really useful to explain that to your children. And what I like to do is I use books and resources to help explain it. So I'm going to now show you a little clip on YouTube. I'll just share my screen again. So there's a lot of really useful stuff on YouTube to do with anxiety. So this one is from Anxiety Canada. You can see over on the side there are lots of different things that you could be looking at. If you just type anxiety for children into YouTube, you'll come up with lots of child-friendly little film clips. But I've chosen this one. So I think it does quite a good job of explaining. Actually, bear with me. I just remembered that I need to make sure I've got the audio working on that. And yes, I have, because you need to hear it. So here we go. I'm going to play it now. See what you think.
You know that scared or nervous feeling you get when you have to do something you're not sure you can do? Or go somewhere you've never been before? That feeling is called anxiety. And it can feel a bit different for each person, but it usually doesn't feel very nice. Maybe your palms get sweaty, or your body tenses up, or maybe you get a tummy ache. Maybe you've heard of anxiety, or maybe you haven't, but you've definitely felt it before. Because everyone feels it sometimes. It's normal. You want to know something really weird about anxiety? It's actually trying to help you. It's true. All those uncomfortable feelings, those happen because your brain thinks you're in danger, and it wants to protect you. When our muscles tense up and we sweat, it gets us ready to do a lot of exercise, which is helpful if you need to jump out of the way of a runaway train or wrestle a wolverine. Sometimes our minds go blank and we feel like we can't move or talk. That would be great if we needed to hide. Instead, we just feel stuck. When your brain does this, it's called fight, flight, or freeze. The problem is, sometimes your brain gets confused and it can't tell the difference between a charging moose and, say, going to a new school. Both things can be scary and cause anxiety. But there aren't any dangerous wild animals at a new school. Hopefully. Understanding where anxiety comes from is the first step in learning to deal with it. So the next time you're in one of those tough situations and you start to feel those feelings, like butterflies in your stomach or sweaty palms, or it gets hard to talk or move, remember, there's nothing wrong with your body. You're just having normal feelings of anxiety, and they're actually trying to help, even if they're not very good at it sometimes.
Okay, so as I said, there's lots of clips on YouTube, and in my list of resources at the end, I've put some other really useful clips. They're suitable for different ages, so I suggest that you... Ooh, sorry about that. I obviously need to go and get rid of that. Bear with me a second.
For another couple of months, and everything will be fine again. People will get back to their 9-to-5 job.
Bit of a technical blip.
Fly with Abel and Phi.
For some reason I'm having trouble getting out of that. Let's get rid of it. There we go. Right, apologies for that. That's all this technology is new to us, isn't it? I'm sure we'll get the hang of it eventually. So yeah, have a look on YouTube and you will find a lot of really good clips on there. That one explained that sometimes you get anxious when there is no danger. So it can be very useful to tell your children that they have a worry alarm inside them. So the worry alarm goes back to caveman days when we used to have to run away from saber-toothed tigers. Our worry alarm would go off and we would instantly run away, or we might fight. So that's the fight or flight instinct. And if you were crossing a busy road and a car came zooming around the corner very fast, you wouldn't stop and think, oh, how fast is that car going? Should I do something? You would immediately run to the other side. That is because your worry alarm has gone off and it's there to keep you safe. But unfortunately, our worry alarms do go a bit haywire sometimes, and our worry alarms can go off when there is no danger. So, you know, think of, I think the number one anxiety for adults is public speaking. So there's no danger in public speaking, is there? Or spiders, certainly in this country, there aren't any poisonous spiders, but our worry alarms do tend to go off. So the rest of this workshop, I'm going to be looking at some strategies to help. So let me just share my PowerPoint with you again. Right, so anxiety can look like that. Okay, so here are some common strategies that adults use to try and help children. So providing excessive reassurance. So children who are anxious will sometimes ask lots and lots of questions, and they will need lots and lots of reassurance. Permitting avoidance, doing things for the child, becoming impatient, being tough, forcing the child to do things. So those are things that a lot of adults will try to do in order to help. So stop share. I'm now going to read to you about those particular strategies from a book I've got. It's called Helping Your Anxious Child, a step-by-step guide for parents. And again, it is on the list of resources. It's a really, really useful book. I like it because it's got a lot of sort of case studies and examples. So let's think about providing reassurance for your child. So when a child is anxious, obviously we want to reassure them. It's our natural instinct. But anxious children can sometimes be consistently anxious, and they will ask you questions over and over again, and then you'll comfort them and explain things to them. They'll go away, and 5 minutes later they're asking the same questions. So just see what you think of this. I'm going to read a passage from the book. Reassurance is a form of positive attention for your child. This means that every time your child gets anxious and you reassure him or her, you're actually rewarding your child's anxiety. In some cases, this might make the anxiety seem almost worthwhile for the child. At the very least, it can help to teach children that they can't cope by themselves and they need you to help. For this reason, you might find that for your anxious child, you'll actually need to hold off your reassurance more than you would for a non-anxious child, simply so that your anxious child is encouraged to learn that he or she can do things for him or herself. So no one is suggesting that you don't reassure your anxious child. Of course you do. But I found that quite interesting the first time I read it. So you think about a very anxious child that is asking repeated questions. They have the feeling of anxiety. They go to their parent. They ask the anxious questions. The parent answers their questions. The parent reassures them. Perhaps they get a cuddle. That's nice. And that feels better. Then the child goes away and those anxious feelings come back again. So they seek reassurance again. So they're going to keep on seeking that reassurance because they know they're going to get it. So like it says here, it might be an idea to hold off your reassurance. Obviously, yes, reassure them, but think about how much reassurance you're giving them, and is that rewarding your child? Moving on to the next one. So doing things for your child. I think we all do this. We all do or have done most of these things. So doing things for your child. When a child is extremely anxious, some parents will try to take over and direct their child. In other words, they will tell the child exactly what to do, how to behave, what to say in the anxiety-provoking situation, and they'll do things on behalf of their child. So obviously you're wanting to do that, to make your child feel better, but is it helping them to actually manage that anxious situation? So most parents don't tell their kids what to do in anxiety-provoking situations out of natural bossiness. Rather, parents behave in this way because they feel so much for the child when they see them becoming gripped by fear. In the short term, this strategy of stepping in helps to reduce the children's fear, and it gets them what they want. However, if you think about it, this reliance on parental direction is actually a form of avoidance. So the child that's relying on their parental direction is not coping with or managing the anxious making situation themselves. And of course, how are they going to manage when their parent isn't there? Because you can't always be there. Permitting avoidance. So along similar lines, anxious children try to avoid lots of activities. As a parent, it's hard to continually push your child to face fears. So sometimes you might give in and let your child avoid them. If this happens occasionally, it's understandable. Obviously, in the short run, your child's anxiety and distress will drop, and you will also make yourself very popular by allowing your child to get out of things that they don't want to do. However, if it becomes a common habit, the long-term consequences of permitting avoidance in your child can be more serious. As long as children continue to avoid, they will not overcome anxiety. So permitting avoidance, obviously it's not going to be helpful in the long term, and sometimes it's just quicker and easier to do things for your child. For example, if you say to your child, here you are, here's the envelope with the swimming money, and will you go and give it to the kind lady in the office? And your child doesn't want to, even though they know the kind lady in the office and they see her every day. That's just a step too far to actually approach her by themselves. So it might just be easier to say, oh, give it to me, I'll do it, quicker and easier. But in small situations like that, where it's your child is really going to not come to any harm, and it's only going to take a few seconds for them to do what you're asking, it's probably a good idea to, rather than saying, I'll do it and let them avoid it, is to support and guide them to do it at least semi by themselves to start with, and then with a view to helping them to do that sort of thing by themselves in the future. Okay, we are now going to move on to some ideas to help, and this is what we're going to be talking about. Share my screen again. So we've talked about that. Right, so this is what we're going to move on to talking about next, some specific strategies to help your anxious child. First of all, teaching the importance of self-care and relaxation. So I was once speaking to a clinical psychologist, and she said to me, Jane, before you talk to any parent or child or group of people about strategies to deal with anxiety, don't forget to talk about self-care and relaxation. So hence, that is the number one thing in my list, and we'll be talking about that in a minute. Secondly, training your brain to control your thoughts. That's easier said than done, but it can be done. Then we're going to talk about step ladders and problem solving. And last of all, encouraging feelings talk. So self-care and relaxation, really, really important. In my group workshop, where I've actually got physical people in a room like we used to have, I ask parents at this point what pressures they feel that children are under today, because children are more and more under a lot of pressure today. So here's some of the things that I've jotted down that parents have said, and obviously it's not an exhaustive list, there's going to be more. So life is very fast paced. There's pressure at school, so there's academic pressure, but there are other pressures at school. There are friendship issues, You know, everything that goes on in the playground, that can be very pressured for some children. Social media, certainly for the older children, that's a pressure. Activities, clubs, appointments, just rushing around all the time. Parents are very busy. Too much screen time. Yep, too much screen time. Not enough downtime. Not enough time to just be children. So you might want to think of your own pressures. In fact, in a minute, I'll ask you to jot that down. So learning to relax has never been more important, but does your child get enough time to relax? There's a follow-up activity for this. So in the follow-up activity, you could jot down all the things that different members of the family do to relax. So what do we mean by relaxing? Parents will often say to me, does screen time, is it included? Because it's true, some children really enjoy their screen time. I'm not talking about those sort of, you know, shoot 'em up games where they're losing lives and they're getting frustrated and angry at the game. That is not relaxing. But, you know, children have been doing lots of silly things on YouTube, haven't they? Watching other children opening presents. You know, why that's fun, I don't really understand. Watching children make slime. So yes, screen time can be relaxing, but the sort of real relaxing that I want you to make sure that your children are doing would not involve screens. So what else do your children do to relax? You know, kicking a ball about in the garden, if that's what your child finds relaxing, then that counts. If you've got a child that likes colouring or doing craft activity, that counts. Going for a walk with the family, if your children enjoy that, playing with the pets. Children don't tend to sort of sit and do nothing for relaxing. I mean, I can sit in my chair on a sunny day in the garden doing literally nothing and I'm relaxing. But children might find it harder to sit and do nothing. So think all those activities, reading, you know, another one. So think of what your child does to relax and how often do they do it? Ask your child what they do to relax. What is their understanding of the word relaxation? I find that the younger age group don't really understand what the word relaxing means. Secondly, what do you do to relax as parents? So put your hands up if your children never see you relaxing. So usually quite a few hands will go up at this point. What gets in the way of parents relaxing? Well, life, children, work, you know, everything. But how important is it that, you know, you busy, stressful people have time to relax? And also, what is the best way to teach someone to do something? It's to show them. So if you don't already relax in front of your children, try and start building in some regular time when you do. And tell your children that's what you're doing. I'm going to relax now. You might use chill time, downtime, whatever it is for your family. So before you start thinking about strategies to help your anxious child, have a really deep think about relaxation. It's a basic self-care skill that we all need to learn. Okay, where are we? Where's my screen share gone? There it is. Sorry, this is all a bit clunky and slow. I'm sure there might be a better way to do this. So, learning to relax. Is it important? What will happen if you do it? What will happen if you don't? What are the barriers to you relaxing or to your child relaxing? And if you've identified some barriers, how can they be overcome? Okay, moving on. Okay, we're on to the next strategy now to help your child with anxiety. So some really specific things here that you can go out and start doing straight away. You won't be able to do it all. Just take, you know, one or two ideas from this workshop, the ones that really speak to you, and put them into practice. So training your brain to control your worried thoughts. So we've got negative versus positive thinking. We've got telling your brain what to think. We've got finding out the facts and worry time. So let's look at negative versus positive thinking to start with. So we all know what positive thinking means, but do children know what positive thinking means? They might have a vague idea, or they might have no idea at all. So in this little strategy, the idea is that when your child has a negative thought, you point out the positive opposite thought. So let's think about some negative thoughts that children have. The dark, so a really common one. Nighttime, bedtime, the dark, lots of negative thoughts going through your child's mind. What are those negative thoughts? There are monsters. So the opposite thought to that obviously is that there are no monsters. You know, that doesn't always work. But talk to your child about some other positives about the dark. It's not all negative. So some other positives that you might talk about could be the moon and stars come out at night, and they're very beautiful. You know, you might take your child outside on a clear night and look at the stars. We wouldn't see any of that if we didn't have the dark. And what about the little nocturnal animals that come out at night? The badgers and the hedgehogs. They come out at night. We don't see them during the daytime. Let's think of another one. A child that is scared of dogs. So the child doesn't want to go to the park because there might be a dog there. What is the opposite of that thought? The opposite, there might not be a dog there. Or the opposite might be, there might be a dog there, but it might be very far away at the other end of the park, and you might still have fun. Another one, going to something new, going to a new school, going to an after-school club, something along those lines. Really natural, obviously, to be worried and anxious about starting something new. I think some of the worried thoughts that go through children's mind in that situation are, I won't know anyone, I won't have any friends, I'll be all on my own. Obviously, the opposite to that is you might make new friends. And also, there might be other people there in exactly the same boat. So every time your child has a negative thought, explain to them that that is a negative thought. You know, they don't necessarily know what the word negative means, depending on their understanding. So that's a negative thought. Let's see if we can think of a positive thought. And do it on yourself as well, because a lot of us adults are really guilty of negative thinking, aren't we? So every time a negative thought enters your mind, you try and think of what the positive thought might be. So it's teaching positive thinking. So I meant to say that all these strategies, you might recognize them. They are very well known. They're very evidence-based strategies and used in cognitive behavior therapy, or CBT. If you've any experience of CBT, you will recognize these strategies. And the reason that they're so well used and well known is that they really do work. But obviously it takes practice. You know, there are no overnight fixes. So I'm going to move on to the next one now. Tell your brain what to think. So take control of your own brain. I'm going to be reading from a book here. It's called What to Do When You Dread Your Bed. So some of you might have come across it. Actually, I'm just going to show my face again. So I've got this book. It's called What to Do When You Dread Your Bed, a kid's guide to overcoming problems with sleep. And with regard to telling your brain what to think, I'm just going to read a bit to you in a moment. So when we have worrying thoughts, the worrying thoughts tend to churn around and around in our brains. They just won't go away. And we have so many what if questions, you know, what if this happens? What if that happens? Just a churning round and round and round. And that is our brain, you know, that's our brain. But we can take control of our brains and we can tell our brains what to think. So this is what it's suggesting here. And I quite like it because it's very child friendly, this book. It's a book that you can use with your child. So it's like your brain is a giant TV. If a scary show is blaring, It's really hard to ignore, but there is something you can do. You can change the channel. So decide ahead of time, and I think that's important, decide ahead of time what you would rather watch on your brain TV. So it might be unicorns, if you love unicorns. It might be what you did on your favourite holiday. It might be something that you're looking forward to, a party or a family event, you know, anything really nice. Or it might even be, you know, a computer game that you're enjoying. Whatever your child is enjoying, encourage them to think about that. So you have to do this at a neutral time. So explain to your child that they've got a TV in their brain, and when they've got those worried, anxious thoughts going round and round and round in their brain, they've got the negative channel on. So we can switch the channel and we can change over to the nice channel. So it's a bit like so many parents have said to their child when their child says, I can't get to sleep, I'm scared of the monsters, and your reaction might be to say, think of something nice. So it is basically that, think of something nice, but actually spend a little more time explaining to your child what this strategy is about and practice it. So you might have a time when you, as a family, you all sit down and you say, what would be your favourite channel in your brain? Each person says, what would be the favourite channel in their brain to watch? And you might jot them down, you might draw a picture or something like that. So train your brain to think what you want to think. So as an adult, you know, lots of adults have problems sleeping. And I know that if I have problems sleeping and I've got anxious thoughts going round and round in bed, I know that's going to keep me awake. So sometimes I can manage to get my brain to stop thinking those anxious thoughts and think about something else altogether. It's not easy and it does take practice. So all of these training your brain strategies do take practice. So if you try one of them and you feel that it doesn't work, don't give up on it, you know, keep going. Okay, we're going to move on to looking for the facts now. So when we worry about things, a lot of us tend to catastrophize, and we will just imagine the worst thing that is possibly going to happen. I'll give you an example. A little boy that I worked with a few years ago, I think he was about 7 years old, and he was terrified of doing the swimming gala. He didn't like swimming for a start, and he'd worked himself up into such a tiz. His anxiety levels were through the roof about the swimming gala, and nothing really seemed to help. So I suggested that he and his mum find out what the facts are about this swimming gala, because he didn't even know what the word gala meant. You know, what's a swimming gala? What on earth happens there? It's just scary and I don't want to go. I'm definitely going to get a tummy ache or feel ill on the day. So his mum supported him to find out the facts about the swimming gala. So he was imagining that he would have to swim a whole length, which he couldn't do. He was imagining that he was going to have to do a stroke that he'd never done before. He was imagining that he would have to swim on his own in front of all the parents and teachers. So his mum and this little boy went to the teacher and they found out the facts about the swimming gala and they wrote them down. So the facts were more like this. No, he wouldn't have to swim a whole length. He could try to swim a width, which he could just about manage. Of course, he wouldn't have to do a stroke he'd never done before. He could choose what stroke. And no, he wouldn't have to swim in front of everyone. So that didn't take his anxiety away completely. And, you know, I can't say he got up on the day of the swimming gala and was thinking, great, it's the swimming gala today. So he felt nervous, but he didn't feel anything like as anxious as he had when he didn't know what was going to be happening. So become a bit of a detective. Search for the facts. I'm going to read to you from this book. You might not be able to see that, or you might have come across it before. It's called Starving the Anxiety Gremlin. Let me just find the page. Bear with me. Page, where are we? Page 33. Should have these pages folded down, shouldn't I? Oh, sorry, no, that's the wrong page. It's page 132. Okay, be a thought detective. When you feel yourself getting anxious, you need to try and think like a detective. So this means searching for things called facts, just like a detective searching for evidence. Facts are the things that we know are definitely true. So this is a very child-friendly book, and there's lots of illustrations in it, and there's lots of activities for your child to do, and lots of examples. So here's an example about searching for the facts. It's a similar thing. It's about the school sports day. So it's the day of the school sports day, and all of the children are happy and excited, except one. 6-year-old Sophie is very anxious. So she's got lots of thoughts churning around and round in her head. What if I fall over and the people laugh at me, thinks Sophie, as the school sports day is about to start. What if I drop my egg off the spoon and it rolls into the spectators and I can't get it back? What if no one wants to be my partner in the 3-legged race? What if I come last in the running race? Everyone will say mean things to me and think I'm useless. I'll never be able to go back to school and face them again. So poor Sophie is really catastrophizing there, the worst things that could happen going through her mind. So then there's a little picture with a thought bubble for Sophie, and your child is invited to write down some of the anxious thoughts in that thought bubble. And then over the page, your child will be invited, if they do this activity, to think about some of the thoughts that Sophie could have that won't make her anxious. So my family will be proud of me no matter where I come in the race. So that is true. That's a fact. And I'm worrying about things that are unlikely to happen. But if they did happen, it would be okay. And I think that's a really good example of, they could go and find out a lot of the facts, and also prepare, if her egg dropped off her spoon in the egg and spoon race and it rolled into the crowd, what would she do? What would she do about that? So being prepared is really important as well. So that's looking for the facts. Let's now talk about worry time. So worry time. So you're never going to stop your child from worrying. You're not going to erase worry from their mind. It's a natural human thing. We all worry. So worry time, and some of you might have come across this before, means that you allocate a particular time in the day, 10 or 15 minutes, when that is the time to worry. So as I'm sure you know, anxious children worry all the time. If you've got an anxious child, if they're getting anxious about the sports day or the swimming gala or the new school or what, whatever it is, those thoughts will be churning around and around in their head all the time, and they'll be seeking reassurance all the time. So you can teach your child that it's okay to worry, and there is a time and a place for worry, and we're going to have a specific worry time every day for 15 minutes, say after lunch, or whenever you choose, not just before bedtime. That's not a good idea. So I'm going to read to you again from the book What to Do When You Dread Your Bed, because it talks about worry time here. It talks about worry time in a way that I hadn't thought about it before. So actually you can use worry time, if appropriate. It might not be appropriate, but you'll see in this example it is. You can use it as a way to sort of distract your child and bring a bit of humour into the situation. So this child is scared of monsters. So if your scary thoughts are about monsters, schedule a monster time in your house. Monster time should happen every day for at least 15 minutes, but not right before bed. You and one of your parents or brothers and sisters, if they're interested, are going to use this special monster time to chew on monster thoughts. So let's get creative. And this is where the humour comes into it in this bit. You might start making up a funny song that has the word monster in it, and you might make up a dance to go along with that song. Sing and dance it every day in worry time. During a different monster time, you might write the word monster over and over, or type it into your computer using lots of fancy fonts. Pretend you're a monster. Have the rest of your family pretend too. Make monster faces. So draw silly pictures about monsters. Do lots of silly monster activities. So for your child that's scared of monsters, obviously, there's an opportunity there to make it quite funny. Then you might shift the monster activities, and you might draw a monster that seems more real to you, or have your mum or dad draw a monster that seems more, or I'm just thinking quickly, say your child was afraid of dogs, and you might find a picture or draw a picture of quite a scary dog with sharp teeth. And then ask your mum or dad to print the pictures of the monsters from the computer. Take turns to make up names for them, tell silly stories about them, colour in the realistic monster pictures, cut them in. So basically finding lots and lots of activities. It goes on to give lots of suggestions. So that's worry time. So worry time can be a time when it is that time when your child comes to seek reassurance from you, and they can ask all the questions and you can reassure them and answer their questions. If appropriate, think about using worry time as a way to distract and bring a bit of humour into the situation, because if you can, obviously that is going to help to water down their worry. Okay, those are some training your brain strategies. We're going to move on now. Another screen share. Okay, yeah, just to recap, so negative versus positive thinking, telling your brain what to think. So that's about changing the channel and watching a different channel on your brain. Finding out the facts and worry time. Another strategy now, this is quite a big one, the step ladder approach. So let's talk through this. I'm going to use the book that I used originally for this, called Helping Your Anxious Child, a Step-by-Step Guide for Parents. And I think it will become clear. So the step ladder approach is about taking a specific worry or anxiety and breaking it down into small steps. Okay. For example, let's think of a child who is afraid of going to sleep in the dark and wants the lights to be on in the room every night. To do step ladders, you might first get the child to go to sleep with a fairly bright light on in the hall, if that's not too big a step. The child might agree. After several nights, you might get the child to go to sleep with a light on in the room across the hall. And then after a few nights, the child might agree to try a small, fairly dull lamp in the hall outside. Eventually, the child could try going to sleep with the only light being a faint one in a distant room. And finally, the child will go to sleep with no light at all. I don't know many children who go to sleep with no light at all. So how do step ladders work? I'm reading again here. Step ladders are a step-by-step way to beat fears. With your help, your child will work out a step-by-step plan to beat each fear. Your child will attempt each step in turn, beginning with the least difficult and working up to situations that are most worrying. Every step of a step ladder is more proof that your child can beat the fear. He or she will feel proud of his or her success as they conquer each step, but your child will need your encouragement to keep going. So children learn from step ladders that even if they feel worried, they can cope. During a step ladder, children will have to experience some situations that make them feel worried. And this is important because it helps children learn that although they may have started off feeling uncomfortable and worried, the bad things they feared didn't actually happen. And by doing this, your child learns that he or she can tolerate some feelings of worry and that these won't stop him or her from doing things. After all, none of us can go through life without ever feeling anxious. So I think that's really important, that point. So the children that try to and successfully try to avoid, anxious making situations. So that is not really addressing the problem. But if you do something like step ladders, if there is a specific anxiety, and often I use this with bedtime with parents that I work with, breaking it down into small steps can be really useful. So if you decide to do this, I would suggest that you or get your child to draw a big step ladder on a piece of paper and number the steps. So at the top, you'd write the goal. So let's just take the bedtime one. So the goal might be for the child to go to bed, be settled down and go to bed and to feel okay. All right. So a child that's scared of the dark and needs their parent to lie down and go to sleep with them to drop off to sleep, they are, you know, on the bottom step or just below the bottom step. And clearly it's going to take time, you know, if it's a big fear, it's going to take time for you to climb up that ladder. And there might be little setbacks along the way, but don't worry about that. Just start again. So jot down, if you can. Oh, no, actually, this is the bit where I want you to look back at what you jotted down earlier. If you didn't jot it down earlier, you can just be jotting it down now. An anxiety or a couple of anxieties or worries that either you have yourself, or that you can remember having as a child, or that your child has. Anything, any of those that you've jotted down or that you can think of that you might be able to use step ladders for. So you can't use step ladders for everything, but it is a really, really useful way of helping children to overcome their anxieties. And I think it makes that really important point that we need to feel the fear. We've all heard that saying, feel the fear, but do it anyway. But if the thing that you want to do is incredibly scary, you're not going to just do it anyway. You know, not many people can just dive in and do it. You need to take a different approach. So feel the fear and start to do it in small steps. So, and during those small steps, you will still feel some fear. You might be, if you're a child and you're scared of mum or dad not being in the room, if they've left the bedroom and they're just outside the door, you might feel a little bit afraid, but it's okay. You can survive that. And the next day, your parents will give you praise because you managed to feel that little fear, but be in bed on your own. So be thinking, is there anything that you can use step ladders for? I want to move on now. Let me just, oh no, I'm sharing my screen with you already, to talk about problem solving. So people who are anxious, it's a problem. You know, if you're a child who is scared to go to the park because there are dogs there, that's a problem. It's stopping you from going to the park. If you want to go to a party but you're really too nervous because there might not be any friends but that you know there, that's a problem. If you're scared of, you know, a lot of things that people are scared of, snakes and spiders, that's not, you know, a day-to-day problem, but it certainly is a problem, you know, if you're in a room and a spider comes in and it's blocking your exit, you know. So it causes a lot of problems. And when your child comes to you with their anxiety, yes, you're going to want to reassure them, but you could be thinking about this strategy, problem solving. So I use this problem solving strategy not in just this workshop, the anxiety one, but you'll actually see it popping up in nearly all of the workshops that I do, and it's a conversation that I have with parents, you know, every week, I'd say. So what do we do when we've got a problem? And some people are better at solving problems than others, but what we tend to do is we will be going through a list of possible solutions. So say you've locked yourself out of the house, you're probably going to be thinking, what can I do about this problem? Is there a window open round the back? Is the spare key under the flower pot where it should be? If it's not, you know, sometimes you come up with a solution and it turns out that that wasn't the right solution. Does a neighbour have a key? Is there someone that you can phone to help you? So this did happen to me once many years ago, and I ended up going and getting a wire coat hanger from a neighbour and bending it so that I could stick it through the letterbox, and it had a little hook on the end, and the door handle was quite low and easy to just click down. So I'm quite proud of that bit of problem solving, and my children were watching that. So that's another important point. Role model problem solving in front of your children. So make up, you know, some simple problems like this. The drawer is stuck in the kitchen. That's a problem. What shall I do about it? Shall I wiggle it up and down? Shall I get a sharp knife and give it a poke? Shall I try slamming it shut? Shall I ask for help? Because asking for help is an important skill to learn. So when your child comes to you with a problem, don't dive in straight away and give the answer, because often when children come to us with problems, we kind of know the answer because we're a lot older and a lot wiser. So, for example, if a child comes home from school and says, so and so wouldn't play with me today, parent, wants to solve that problem for them. They want to help them. So they might say, well, why didn't you go and play with so and so? Or could you have told the playground supervisor? Or there's a hopscotch. Was anyone playing the hopscotch? You could have gone in to join with them. Or could you have played on your own for a bit? And they will bombard the child with ideas and solutions to help solve the problem. So in future, when your child comes to you with a problem, instead of giving them all the answers, say, that's a problem. What do you think you could do to solve it? Now, you'll probably get a, don't know, So, as I said, none of these things work overnight, but start encouraging your child to solve their own problems. So you might say, that's a problem. What could you do about it? And they say, I don't know. So, okay, let's get a sheet of paper and let's brainstorm. And you might want to explain to them what brainstorming is. Let's brainstorm some possible solutions. And if you really want to take it the whole hog, you could make up some problems. So say your child is going to a new school or into a new situation. I know when a lot of children go to secondary school, they're really worried about getting lost. They're really worried about not understanding the homework. They're worried about forgetting to take the right book to the right lesson, all those sorts of things. So you could make up some scenarios that your child might be facing. So making it relevant to your child, obviously, is much more helpful than talking about other people's problems. So yes, you're at secondary school or wherever it is, or you're out with the family and you've got lost. That's a problem. What would you do in that situation? So really, really useful to talk through problem solving with your children. And I don't think it's something that a lot of parents, and myself included when my boys were younger, I don't wake up one day and think, well, I need to teach my children problem solving. We tend to think of problem solving as sort of a mathematical thing. And children just do tend to learn it. A lot of people are good at solving problems and they just learn it as they're growing up. But as I say, anxious children, it's quite problematic to be anxious, and teaching them, all of these strategies are useful, but include problem solving in it as well. Okay, right, we're getting near the end now. I just want to talk to you about scaling. So what is the scale of the problem that your child, of the level of anxiety that your child is feeling? So a lot of you might have come across scaling charts. So let's take the child that is scared to be upstairs alone in the house. I work with quite a few families who say their children will not be upstairs. If they've got to go upstairs and get something, somebody has to go with them. Or if they're upstairs with mum and mum goes downstairs and they didn't realise they have a major anxiety going on because they found themselves upstairs on their own. So that would be number 10. So pick one of your child's anxieties or get them to choose one and talk through it like this. So when you're upstairs on your own, what number are you feeling? So number 10 is obviously the worst possible. Right down the bottom, 0, no pain. I guess that might be when you're all downstairs together. Or what does your child feel when they're upstairs but you are with them? Where are they? What number on that scale would they be? Maybe a 2? What if they're upstairs and you're not with them but a sibling is? Are they more anxious about that? And actually I quite like the sort of metaphor of the stairs, because I did have a child that was scared of going upstairs and we actually used the stairs. So there was nobody upstairs. The adults were downstairs and with the child, and we asked the child to actually walk up the stairs. And he was able to sort of say what number his anxiety and fear were as he went further up the stairs. So you can apply that to any of your child's anxieties, really, and it's just a way of helping you to understand your child's level of anxiety and for your child to understand it as well. So as we get sort of nearer to the top of the scales, obviously things are going to get more difficult for your child. So when we're at, a number 6, say, you can start doing a bit of problem solving then. So if you feel at a number 6, what can you do to help yourself? One of the things I don't cover in this workshop actually is breathing, and I'm sure that everybody knows that slow, calm breathing is a really good way to calm our nerves. So you could do a little bit of research on that yourselves. I'm sure there are some clips on YouTube about breathing. So when this child has got to say a number 6 or a number 5, even number 4, maybe they might want to think about doing some breathing. Okay, so that's problem solving. So remember that's relevant not just to anxious children, but it's relevant to all children, really. Okay, we are very nearly at the end now. Use books to start conversations with your child about feelings. So not just about anxious feelings, but just about feelings in general. Because if your child can communicate to you what they are feeling, it's so much easier for you to help them. Because as we know, children and adults too tend to communicate their feelings, especially when they're difficult feelings, by their actions. So I'm thinking of the child that has an angry meltdown, and that is their way of communicating their feelings. Wouldn't it be so much better if they could communicate with their words? So because I have an interest in this particular subject, I have been busy writing books about it. So the top one, I'm Not Afraid of Spiders, Poems About Feelings, that is out now. That's on Amazon, so you can get that now, and it's got lots of poems about feelings in. So they both have poems about feelings, not just all the difficult feelings, but the fun feelings as well. There's some funny poems in there. The second one, Fantastic Feelings, that is going to be published this summer, so summer 2020. Here's an example. A little bit scared. So this child is feeling a little bit scared. So I'd like to ask this child where they were on that scaling chart. What number were they at? I'll just read it through. I'm starting a new school today. I'm feeling a little bit scared. I've been for a visit. It seemed okay. But will I like it there? Will the teacher be very strict? What if I need the loo? And who will be there to help me if I don't know what to do? Will the work be too hard? Will the other children be kind? There are so many things I need to know, so many questions in my mind. I'm starting a new school today. I'm feeling a little bit scared. I wish I knew it would be okay. I hope I like it there. So you could read that through with your child in order to start a conversation about feeling a little bit scared. And some other words for scared might be nervous, anxious, frightened. I tend to read these poems with children, and I might say to the child, so imagine this is a friend of yours, and how could you help them? Because it can be really useful to use my books in this way. So don't make it all about the child. So if you were reading a poem to a child that gets angry a lot, and you were reading a poem about anger to them, you might not make it all about them, but you could talk about the child in the poem. So the second book, the one that's going to be out soon, it says poems and activities there, but it's also going to have stories in. So use books to help start conversations with your children about feelings. So we are just about at the end now. I just want to show you some resources. So you can get this from Pinpoint. I've emailed this to Pinpoint, so if you'd like this, do grab yourselves a copy. So if any of you with anxious children haven't come across heysigmund.com, then do have a look at it. There's a wealth of information on there about anxiety. So just go to the children bit, and there's a lot of really useful articles. YouTube, as you can probably guess, I'm a big fan of YouTube. Here are some specific clips that I like. Anxiety management for kids. So type in the exact words, anxiety management for kids, Carolyn Seri, a story about you and your emotions, anxious, manage anxiety and worry for kids, vocabulary. And I've just realized the one I showed you wasn't on there. So that is Anxiety Canada. And there's clips on Anxiety Canada for different sort of stages of children. Books. So the books that I've used are Starving the Anxiety Gremlin by Kate Collins Donnelly, these books are to be used, the first 2 books are to be used with your child, so they're extremely child friendly, and they will help you to start conversations about anxiety, and I just really highly recommend them. What to do when you worry too much. So I was reading to you from a book called What to Do When You Dread Your Bed. You might know these books, a lot of people do, but it's by the same author. What to Do When You Worry Too Much. She talks about worries being like tomatoes. If you feed tomatoes, they grow. And the book that I've been reading from quite a bit is Helping Your Anxious Child, a step-by-step for parents, by Ronald M. Rapey. It's also by lots of other authors too, but too many to put down here. For helping children understand and talk about emotions, I'm Not Afraid of Spiders by me, and Fantastic Feelings by me. Do get in touch with me if you want to know, if you have any questions, if you want to know when my book is out, or any thoughts or questions. You can find the Cambridge Parent Coach on Facebook. I will be launching a new website shortly, and I will be on Instagram as well. So I hope that you have found that useful. So your homework really is to look through each of those strategies and see which of them is going to be relevant for your child. Don't sort of dive in straight away and start using something. Have a think about it first, and if you think that a strategy is going to be really useful for your child, think about how you would use that with them, how would you explain it to them. But don't forget, I did stress earlier in the workshop that explaining what anxiety is very important. And also, before you start on the particular strategies, think hard about teaching your child relaxation and self-care skills. So that is the end of the workshop. I do hope you've enjoyed it, and get in touch with Pinpoint if you'd like a copy of those resources. Thank you for coming. Bye bye.